Hi, my name's Sam. Um, I've never really made a YouTube video before except for when I was in middle school making Minecraft videos, but I thought this was an interesting way that I'd be able to reach people. For context, am 18. I am a senior in high school. I go to Eastside High School in Gainesville, Florida, and I'm currently doing my college applications. I And for individual colleges, they oftentimes make you do like supplementary essays. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about disability. Um, I I have a very rare chronic disease that's fairly physically disabling, and I wanted to talk about my perspective on sort of largely society, how it views disabilities, um, how we participate in society, things like that. So, um, I think that a lot of the difficulties that disabled people experience are not as a result of their disability, but of society not accommodating their disability. And I think that oftentimes disabilities are treated both through actions, and you can observe it linguistically by non-disabled people in a way to make them feel better. If you take a really impactful example, a widespread example is tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is the, I believe, largest killer of humans in history. Something like 1 in 3 people had it or died from it or something. Point being, it's still a really big problem in developing countries. It could be solved if people put more effort into it, but they just shove it away. You can read John Green's book on it if you're interested. But I so how this connects to non-disabled people making themselves feel better is that in in medieval Europe, and this I know from John Green's book, uh, so people were getting tuberculosis left and right. They don't really know what causes tuberculosis, and so they when I say they in this case, are referring to non-disabled people. You know, are trying to find a reason to explain it. They're trying, and so like imagine you don't have tuberculosis, but like your, let's say, brother has tuberculosis, and so your brother's dying. He's visibly dying. He's shrinking by the day. He's getting weaker, sleeping more, coughing up blood. Bad situation. He's gonna die soon from a disease that he didn't ask for. He didn't do anything for it, and it's sort of like it's human nature to try to find explanations for things. I think that's sort of an innate human curiosity, but can also oftentimes lead to situations which are less than optimal. In talking about my disability with my therapist, um, if you're in Gainesville, Trim Tab Therapy, great place, would recommend. I so he brought up a poem. It's that is very related to this. It's the poem's very short. It's by Kurt von something or other, Cat's Cradle, and it's tiger got to hunt, bird got to fly, man got to sit and wonder why. Tiger got to sleep, bird got to land, man got to tell himself he understand. Um, I think it's a reflection of the existential curiosity of humans and how oftentimes we forget the basic necessities. You just gotta live, you know? You've gotta be humans first and existentially question things second, because if you sacrifice humanity to trying to understand it, it can oftentimes have bad side effects. In this case, in medieval Europe, they ended up romanticizing tuberculosis as a way to make themselves, non-disabled people, feel better. So in an effort to try to explain why this disability was rampaging the population, people were losing their loved ones, instead of treating it pragmatically or just living first, as in, sure, my brother has tuberculosis, but instead of existentially wondering, why does he have tuberculosis? Did he do something? Is it his fault? Is it, why? You could just live. You could be with your brother as he died and accept that that's what's happening. Like, you're flowing down the river and you've got a dam in the way and you're going to run into it, but at least you can be with your brother until then. And so in the end, they romanticized tuberculosis as something that was great to have, that it was something that became sexually fetishized. So when you have tuberculosis, a lot of blood comes to your face. You're very gaunt because of weight loss. So your cheeks turn really rosy. The blood is present there and they're kind of hollow. Your face tapers down as your cheekbones stand out. But your flesh is receding because you don't have enough calories. And so they romanticized this as something that was great to have, something that was beautiful, and you're like, oh, you have tuberculosis, how lucky. It's like, yeah, you're suffering, but you look beautiful. Why did these social norms come about? Well, because non-disabled people didn't want to feel bad. If your brother has tuberculosis and he's dying, at least he looks sexy as he's dying, as opposed to you just feeling bad. You're like, damn, he didn't do shit. And he's dying, and I'm not, and I feel bad about that. And instead of just being like, okay, I feel bad about that, let's just be here now, Ram Dass, they were like, let's make ourselves feel better, but at the cost of tuberculosis patients, or not patients, but people with tuberculosis, let's say. Because imagine you have tuberculosis, and everyone's like, oh, how lucky, and you're like thinking to yourself, well, shit, man. I mean, yeah, it's nice. Everyone thinks I look hot, but I'm dying. I don't want to die. I didn't do anything. This sucks. And everyone is saying, oh, you're so beautiful. You're so lucky. And it's like, you're invalidating my experience. You're saying that I should feel good to be suffering like this. It's really shitty. Cool, though, that in a sense, it's cool as an idea that this example of how disabled people are treated by non-disabled people in society and how these two interlink and how oftentimes disabled people are the minority has carried over to modern society, in that in Victorian era, when tuberculosis was fetishized, specifically the blushing of your cheeks under extreme fever, and weight loss, has carried over to modern society, and you can see this in the fact that it's often standard practice for women to apply makeup to make their cheeks look rosy. I didn't know that until I read the book. It's pretty interesting. Carrying this over into modern day, I think it still stays something quite similar, that disabilities are oftentimes treated as a sickness, something to be overcome, something to be beaten. It's a very Western ideology. It's a very privileged ideology, and it's rooted in non-disabled people, I believe, trying to make themselves feel better and take accountability off of themselves. To quote Dumbledore from Harry Potter, oh shit, do I even have the quote on? Basically, the right path and the easy path are not always the same. But you can, Harry Potter sense, remember Cedric Diggory, he died, take the right path. But in this case, it's like, imagine you're a non-disabled person and you're like, oh, if I just treat a disabled person and sort of indoctrinate them mentally of like, this disability you have to beat, it's not our fault, it's your fault. That's what it's indirectly saying. If you have to beat it, then that means you are accountable, and it is therefore your responsibility. to help yourself in this situation. Certainly, disabled people have a say in their life, but that's not to say that non-disabled people can't help them. And when non-disabled people are like, oh, even if it's unintentionally, just like this disability, you've got to beat it. You can do it, man. Oftentimes they're supportive. They're like, how are you doing? How are you improving? Are you beating your disability? And it's like, that part, are you improving, are you beating it, is to sort of mentally quell their own guilt about it. But the I think innate purpose, even if unintentional, of treating a disabled person as the person who's solely responsible for their disease helps non-disabled people because it takes the burden of accommodating them off. For example, oftentimes in interpersonal relationships, in my experience, people are significantly more accommodating. So like, my best friend, if I'm like really sick, or if I'm having a big flare up, I can be like, hey, can you carry my backpack to the next class? Like, of course. I'll carry your backpack for you because my body doesn't hurt and your body does hurt, and it'll help you be in less pain right now. But like, on the greater scheme of things, I can't just be like, system that society has constructed, please carry my backpack to the next class. People didn't really, were not either cognizant enough or didn't care enough when making the school system. So it's like, when you're saying that it's my responsibility to beat this disability, you're taking the accountability off of you to help me. And it's like, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's your responsibility to help me. You've got to come to my house every morning and drive me. Nah, that's bullshit. But it's like, we have a surplus of resources, oftentimes, not always. Often there can be really bad situations. And it's like, instead of using that tax money to have very basic needs met for disabled people, like minority populations, you were instead pushing them away, ignoring them, because it's easier for yourself, and then you can, I don't know, embezzle money. DeSantis. And so I think that it is something that people need to be more, that people could be more cognizant of, and if they were more cognizant of it, could change society in a way that was beneficial for people with disabilities and did not harm people that did not have disabilities, but did take away certain luxuries. It would, in a sense, sort of equalize the population in terms of able-bodiedness. This obviously carries over to other really big similar problems in society, like the wealth gap. Elon Musk's $1 trillion. Like, seriously, Ka? Point being, I was reading my UC Apps essay 13 minutes into this talk, and there's these little sub-essays, and one of them asks, it says, describe how you have taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity, or, and this is the part I picked, worked to overcome an educational barrier you have faced. Now, I wrote about my physical disability, and I wrote about how, not my physical disability, but the lack of the lack of accommodation and resources for people with my disability or people similar to me with disabilities, that is something I had to overcome. I think that the societally propagated idea that this disability is my problem is the common thing. It's what people expect me to write. It's, oh, this hard disability, this burden was put upon me, and I had to break through it, break the chains. Very different from slavery. I don't want to compare the situation to that, but break the figurative burden, let's say, off of me, and then I'm free, and then I'm back to normal. Normal being you wouldn't think about it, but perhaps kind of offensive term, because it's saying that if you're not normal, you're abnormal. Oftentimes offensive things, or not politically correct things, shall we say, more delicate language, obviously, are offensive in an indirect way. So it's like, you're not saying that you're bad. You're just saying you're not good. So when people are like, come back to being normal, beat your disability, they're not saying I'm not normal. They're not saying, Sam, you're not normal. Be normal. I mean, that's pretty obviously offensive. But if you're saying like, oh, we should help you get back to normal, that's indirectly saying that I'm abnormal. So oftentimes it's important to linguistically think about the insinuations of what you're saying, especially, at least in my experience, in relation to isolating experiences, intense experiences, minority experiences. I'm Jewish, so I do have some experiences in religious aspects, but I'm a white person and I'm a man, so I have significant privilege where I live in the southern part of the U.S. But in the terms of able-bodiedness, I'm a pretty strong minority, and so we can see how this is oftentimes reflected in language, and I think it's actually really important to cultivate your language in a way that's not offensive, or not a way that's not like aggravating or provocative to people already in these situations. Because like we've already talked about the systemic thing of like, yeah, like you should probably fucking help us instead of like using your money for like other shit that doesn't matter that much. But like what I'm trying to say is, I am not sad I have a disability. I'm not disappointed in it. In fact, it makes me like more uncomfortable when people are like, oh, have you beat it yet? Because I'm like, I don't want to take on your guilty feeling because you're like, oh man, he doesn't deserve that. It's like, deserving is not the question at hand. It's just what is, It's like, I wasn't like, I'm going to be white, or I'm going to be a guy, or like, I'm going to love languages. It just happened. And it's not like, man, he doesn't deserve to be disabled. And like, nah, like that's just what happened, and I'm not sad about it. I think there's like a very big spectrum in disabilities, and I want to recognize that I'm not saying that all people with disabilities have to accept them and be proud of them and fight against the regime. I'm just trying to provide my perspective on it from how I am, where I'm significantly physically disabled, but not to the extent where I've absolutely shut down all self-expression. I think it's very different from what I've heard. My grandfather, for example, had a good friend who dove into a pool and broke his neck. It was a very bad situation. He was then paralyzed from the neck down for the rest of his life, and my grandfather, who was great friends with him, expressed to me that he felt as though he would much rather have not had his disability and felt incredibly limited by it. And I can entirely see that. I imagine that it would feel incredibly frustrating to have absolutely no self-expression. I have experienced a similar thing where I don't have absolutely no self-expression, but oftentimes I have significantly more pain and less ability to do things that are that the people typically do, not that is normal. And that has been difficult because it's like I have my brain, I have my thinking, and I'll just lie there, sit there as my friends go run around or go dive in the pool, and I'm like, well shit, I can't do that. That's like, I think an integral part of human existence is interpersonal connection, and innate within interpersonal connection is self-expression, and self-expression is sort of inexorably tied, like, meaning it is, you can't untangle it from being a human themselves. So it's like, you can't untangle self-expression from physical ability. I think in the future, perhaps, Neuralink, just thinking, like, I don't know, maybe you just give someone a whole new body if they want self-expression. But, if I'm like, man, I want to play basketball, for example, I love the art of language speaking. I love how the reactions other people give when I speak their language. I'm sure some other people, like one of my good friends, loves to play basketball. He plays all the time. It's an amazing thing for him. He gets to meet lots of people. If he had my disability, he couldn't do that. He couldn't run. He couldn't shoot the ball very much. He couldn't dribble, etc. And so what I'm trying to say is, in my situation, I do have self-expression still, but it has to be very monitored, so to speak. Like, I can't just go do everything, but I still have ability to do some stuff. And I think that in my situation, I don't wish that I didn't have this disability. On the grand scheme of things, in certain aspects, sure, I loved mountain biking before I was really affected by this. I would love to do that again, but I'm not going to just, if there was a magic pill, I wouldn't take it to just give society an out. Be like, yeah, actually, you don't have to accommodate me. You can just fix me. Insinuating that I'm broken without saying it. Language coming up again. And so I think that we can see this linguistically in the lexicon, meaning the bank of words people typically use, especially in a colloquial sense, in a day-to-day manner, colloquial meaning day-to-day, by the usage and the corresponding connotations, meaning like the sensations or feelings associated with certain words. So like we were talking about earlier, normal, you're not calling me not normal, you're insinuating, perhaps unintentionally, that I'm not normal by saying other people are normal, meaning I'm abnormal. If you speak Spanish, I love the song Anormal by, or maybe Somos Anormales por Calle 13. Buenísimo. And so, that is, I said in Spanish, like, there's a song called We Are Abnormal by an artist called Calle 13, which means 13th Street, and I don't know, it doesn't translate that well. And it's a commentary on society and normal and abnormal and indirectly insinuating things. But basically, it made me think about this because, California, a very accommodating place. In this California application, perhaps using language unintentionally that's like, oh, that's perhaps not the best language to use. So when they were like, using the word overcome, it really bothered me. Like when they said, overcome an educational barrier you have faced. So I basically had said that, like, I believe that in the colloquial lexicon, the day-to-day bank of words people use, the word overcome, or I initially said even the word challenge, defined as task or difficult problem, in colloquial lexicon has a very negative connotation. So it's like negative feelings are associated with this word. If it's a challenge, innately it's something to be beaten, or at least that is how it's used colloquially in the day-to-day sense. And so I think perhaps instead you could just say like a difficult situation or something like that, because it is difficult to have a disability and it is a situation, but it doesn't have to be a challenge. I think it's a very Western idea to have to beat it. It's instead of just like experiencing it. If that's interesting to you, look up Taoist philosophy, spelled with a T, T-A-O, T-A-O-I-S-T, Taoist. And so, where am I even going with this? Basically, despite what it may seem like on the surface and what society has perhaps unintentionally propagated as an idea, I think that oftentimes, in my experience as a minority, being a disabled person, I don't know if this carries over to other minorities, it's when you take out the interpersonal aspect of it, people are less accommodating because they see you less as a person. And I think an integral part, and like a part that is very important to this idea, is the use of language. I know that it's oftentimes politically correct language is associated with liberals and with wokeness and the left side of the political spectrum, but I would encourage that it doesn't have to be liberals. The idea that I wouldn't want to exclude half of the population more or less from this idea. And it's like, when language is used in a way that is isolating to minority groups, and I'm just talking from my experience, I can't say for everyone, I think that it makes people less interpersonally connected which, as I said, I believe is an integral part to accommodation and to all different groups of people living, having an equitable life, maybe is the right word. So it's like that idea of equality versus equity, where it's like, I could be getting this wrong. I believe that it's like to get everyone to see the TV screen from the same height. You see that graphic where it's like a short person, an average height person, and a tall person, and it's like the short person is on a very tall box, and the tall person is on a very short box, so that one person was given more height genetically, but that the infrastructure from society gave them different tools to reach the same place. I think that, which I think most people would agree is good. It's good to have all people have the same opportunities in life. Fair, one might say. To get to that place, the people in charge of making the system have to see you as a person. And in order to see you as a person, you have to use language that is not excluding you from what is quote-unquote normal, what is typical per se. Because xenophobia, simply like the dislike of someone who's not like you, is innately propagated by the dehumanization of other people. I mean, this is historically like glaringly obvious. For example, I'm Jewish, and in the Holocaust, the atrocities were justified through means of dehumanization, and when the people in charge of the system of murdering Jews, actually went to the concentration camps and saw the Jews getting murdered, there are accounts of the Nazi generals being physically unable to take it. They would be violently shaking or throwing up, having panic attacks or passing out, as they saw people, when you see them face to face, being murdered or gunned down or gassed, and it's absolutely horrible. And I'm not saying that if we just had nice language, the Holocaust wouldn't have happened. It is obviously a horrible and multifaceted situation. Multifaceted meaning multiple facets, so like many things playing into account to lead up to the situation. But I do believe that to a certain extent language is important because it carries a subtle, unconscious bias that is affecting you always. I actually came to a lot of these realizations. Okay, apparently don't have the book here. After reading a book by Eli Wells, something like that. If it was wrong, I'll put it up on the screen. About disability in her experience. I believe she has cerebral palsy, or he. I don't know. They are trans. I don't remember what gender they identify as. Point being, if language is used in a way that is more, that is kinder to minority groups, I believe that it could play a role into reversing, oftentimes, deep-rooted dehumanization of people who are unlike you, whoever you may be. So as opposed, what I'm saying is, I'm encouraging you to try to help promote equity in this world and show you an experience of someone who is uncommon. There are very few people like me in the world who have my specific disability, how disabled I am. There are actually many people with disabilities, oftentimes acquired, from hard labor and things like that. But I'm just trying to show that I think that perhaps as a society, if we were more cognizant of our language, we could help to become closer to everyone and consequently help to humanize them and then be able to help them and then have a more equitable society. And I think that would be fairer. I think this could carry over to a lot of ideas, and that people can when people are viewed and treated as humans their help more deeply, more extensively. They're You can't possibly know everyone's situation and accommodate for them when you build a utopian society. You have to have people help you. That's why I encourage my other disabled folk out there to advocate for yourselves, because you never know until you ask. Never. Just ask. I mean, obviously with some caveats, but like, I think there's communication is important. I think that, being intentional about nuanced language is important. I think that, showing your support for certain things through rallies or protests is important. And I encourage anyone watching this video that if you think that the world could be a fairer, more equitable place, that you try to spread that somehow, like how I'm trying to spread that through this video. That you perhaps just look up, think about what you could do. Let's say you're retired, volunteer for organizations trying to make a more equitable world, like Amnesty International, or local organizations pertinent to any group you belong to. Like, my parents are lesbians, and they oftentimes are subscribed to lesbian magazines or advocate in their specific minority group. I personally am a big fan of advocating in my minority group of disabilities. I created a group chat many years ago of people with my disability who could share their experiences, and it's swelled over time, and it's cool to have people be able to communicate an experience. So, if you've watched this far, and thanks. But I just think, you gotta take action if you want to see change. This experience that I have had, and if it resonates with you, look it up. Look up local disability activist groups. Go to help yourself. Help the situation that you have. Let's say, I don't know, common thing, alcohol addiction. Advocate for social infrastructure for that. Go to some AA meetings or whatever. Not that any of my business, but yeah. Have a good evening.